Hey guys, what is up? It is your friendly neighborhood Ubergoose here, back again with another Isaac break run. This time we're gonna go. Who are we gonna play? Not Judas. I think I'm gonna go around the entire wheel. Aside from the Lost. So who do I want to do this time? Let's go Samson. Samson's a sweet one. And there is the seed right there. Pajax Lolatuka. Is that LOL M2K? Is that what I'm seeing? I feel like that's what I'm seeing there. So hey guys, how's it hanging? What's it? How's it going? I think I might want to do like I don't know, like a fucking big old video that answers a lot of questions that people are asking every goddamn day at this point on my videos. And I mean, it would help for sure, but I'm also sure that the questions would still come up probably nearly as often, but I mean, you know, can't hurt. And what I'm of course referring to is like a video kind of explaining the whole like, hey, why don't you play Dark Souls anymore? Hey, why don't you speedrun anymore? Hey, why don't you do this thing that I only care about because it's a thing and I don't care about you anymore? What? No, nobody would feel that way. Nobody would be that selfish on the internet of all places. Psh, no way. No way. So, I don't know, I think I want to do that. I have brought it up before in these episodes, and I've definitely given some slight amount of insight into it, but not extensive, you know? It's not like a full, fleshed out, well thought out answer. It's more of just like the people, you know? Which, while that's true, it doesn't tell the whole story. So I think I might do that at some point. I don't know exactly in what fashion. I don't know format wise. I don't know any of that. I haven't sussed out the details yet, but I definitely want to do it. It's just a matter of I gotta figure out how it would be best to deliver, I guess, the best format, as well as I need to actually collect my thoughts on the subject. Well, subjects, that's the difficult thing, is that because, you know, I haven't only done a few things, you know, like, if I just had to answer, hey, why don't you do Dark Souls anymore? Easy thing to answer, you know? But the problem is there's a lot of questions. It's not just the one. And so I gotta figure out a way to kind of concisely explain the whole circumstance for everything, pretty much. And that shit's difficult. I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's pretty much all gonna just come down to the people, and the people, and the people. And, oh yeah, also the people. So, you know, if that's a good enough answer for you, then you probably won't need to watch the video whenever it may or may not happen. Brimstone is, yeah, that's an item. Sure. So yeah, if that's a good enough answer for you, then good. I've already answered the question. But, you know, you can't just... The average person is like, hey, why don't you play Dark Souls anymore? And I'm like, cause the community's bad. And they're like, but I don't see the community as bad. And I'm like, alright, well, I mean, it's, you know, it's like my opinion, man. It's just like my opinion. I'm not trying to tell you to stop being part of the Dark Souls community. I don't have a problem with anybody being part of the Dark Souls community. I just am not because of the reason that I've said. That's about it. I mean, There's really nothing to it. But people obviously want more of an answer because they want to be outraged at something. They feed on drama. Humans as a species just love drama. It's actually terrifying how true that is, though. And that's the main reason I don't speedrun very much anymore. Speedrunning is like, I don't know. It's just that I don't want to say that it's been downhill since I learned about it, but like, that's kind of the way that I felt. I felt that like, when I initially learned about speedrunning, it was like this almost utopian sort of thing. It's like, oh my god, there's this beautiful place where people work together to beat the shit out of video games. That's awesome, you know? And then I started doing it, and everything was fine and dandy, and then it just slowly dawned on me that, people are kind of shit. I don't think there's any group that exists where there won't be shitty people. I really don't think that can even possibly exist. I think it's just the nature of the beast, you know? If, let's say, right, let's try and think about it in this way, right? If, let's just toss out a number. If fucking like 10% of people are shit, that's a high number, right? That's definitely a lot higher than would be accurate, I would assume. But let's just say 10% of people, right? If 10% of people are shit, right? Just generally bad people. Did I visit the shop? I wish I didn't get amnesia. There's the shop. Okay. That's really good. Dunk. So let's say 10% of people are shit, right? Any community that's gonna have a size of like 100 or greater, that's probably, and this is based on nothing mathematical at all. Don't assume that I'm like, you know, I figured out like the standard deviation of this shit. I'm just throwing out numbers, right? Just to paint a picture, to illustrate a feeling. I'm not trying to tell you, you know, explicitly, this is how many shitty people there are. But let's say once you get to about 100 people, that's where I would have to estimate. That's when the sample size gets large enough that you probably could start attributing things like, oh, 10% of people on Earth are shit. Thus, once we hit 100 people, we can probably begin to assume that 10% of the people in this grouping are shit. If not 10%, at least a greater than zero number, right? It's the point. I consider it the breaking point. And again, this is based on pretty much nothing at all aside from my own ignorance and self-worth. But, you know, when you reach, there is a breaking point. It exists. No matter what, it exists, right? There's always a point that you reach where any subset you're going to be able to begin taking generalizations of the total society that they're a part of and attribute it to that group, right? There's always a point. I'm gonna hope it's an HP up. I lost, okay. And so the problem becomes, if 10% of people are shit, just generally, then you run into this issue of every group of people is gonna have just this chunk of shitty people, right? Can't avoid it. That's kind of, I don't know. I think what I'm trying to say, without just throwing around random numbers to display feeling and making it sound like I'm a scientist when I'm not, I think what I'm trying to say is the fact that the more people that get involved in a thing, the more that thing becomes, I don't know. basically, speedrunning started getting shit when it became an incredibly common, almost mainstream thing. And this isn't me being like, hey, I speedran before it was cool. I'm trying to say that, like, just the fact is, with a small group of people speedrunning, let's say if there's 20 speedrunners total, right? And again, this is not to say there weren't shitty people beforehand, but they were fairly brushed off. They were like a, you know, this side thing. Most people didn't really give a shit about the shitty people at that point. Mostly, I'm referring, of course, to Twin Galaxies. But, you know, if, like, 20 people are speedrunners in the world, right? They've got one goal, right? And that's just kick the shit out of video games, right? It's a small enough group that there's no motivation, there's no ulterior motive to be a part of it, aside from the goal of the group, which in speedrunning's case is to beat the shit out of video games and do it together, and it's this awesome thing. Once it gets traction, once it gets to this certain point, this certain level of popularity, there become all of these other factors that you have to think about. One of the most obvious ones that, you know, everybody can point to, and honestly, I can't even imagine a way that you could refute this as a thing, getting people into speedrunning, is the ability to sell out in speedrunning, the ability to, you know, turn it into your job to speedrun, right? And you can see this in plenty of speedrunners, right? You can see this, right? And it isn't an innately bad thing to sell out, right? To make something your job is a perfectly normal thing. Like, there's the problem with trying to police in such a way that people will not, you know, that you can try and prevent people from making their hobby their job. Like, that's just not a reasonable thing. There's no actual way to go about doing that, right? You'd be essentially like a dog chasing their tail. I'm glad there wasn't a deal with the devil. I would have been very upset. Because what you're going to be doing is you're going to be like, hey, you're not allowed to sell out, right? You're going to just like call people out on it, right? And maybe the way that you're policing it, maybe the method you've discovered is ridicule, you know, public ridicule, which is a horrible thing. But, you know, if that's your method, you're going to try it, right? You're going to try and publicly shame these people for selling out and shit. And that might work in the short term, but the second that anybody who is actually, you know, who you would consider part of the mainstream speedrunning, like a top speedrunner, let's say Cosmo Wright, nobody's gonna go up to you, or you're gonna, you know, if you're talking about speedrunning, nobody's gonna say Cosmo's not a speedrunner. Cosmo hasn't speedrun a game in months, right? But nobody's gonna call him not a speedrunner, right? Because he's Cosmo. And the thing is, at least I'm assuming he hasn't speedrun a game in months. I haven't seen any news about him speedrunning anything in quite a while. The last time that I remember him doing any speedrunning was pertaining to doing ILs in GoldenEye, and that was a few months ago. So, just so we're clear on that. I could be wrong, but I'm fairly certain I'm not. And so, you know, you can chase your own tail and do this whole policing by ridicule thing for as long as you want, right? Nobody can really stop you. But the problem is, the second that it becomes an acceptable thing, the whole sellout thing, the second it becomes acceptable, such as somebody like Cosmo doing it, that's when you've lost, right? You can no longer police it, right? If a core member is doing it, then it's essentially like this accepted thing, right? People are no longer going to be with you on the whole public humiliation and harassment or whatever of these people doing this thing that you don't think should have any place in it. So there's no reason to complain about selling out, right? For a multitude of reasons, but I think just from a perspective of even if you think selling out is wrong, which I don't think that argument really has any legs to stand on, but even if that's your perspective, you know, you're still going to run into the issue of how do you stop it? And you really can't, right? And so here's what happens in speedrunning. This is what happened in speedrunning. Is this whole sellout thing hit the whole mainstream, right? It became a regular thing with, I would say much less of Cosmo doing it, but like Caleb Hart, for example, I Ate Your Pie. These are people who have essentially, they've gone out of their way to make it less about the act of speedrunning and more about them being a personality and turning that into money to live off of, right? And that, again, there's nothing wrong about that. Nothing. The problem comes when people get into the hobby with that goal in mind, right? That's the problem. And that might sound a little bit ridiculous, I might sound contradictory, but basically what has happened is people who are not part of the speedrun community, who learn about the speedrunning community, think it's cool, the first thing they see is these people making it their job, right? Because it's so commonplace here. And again, you can't really police that. But, right, so then these people who are like, oh, I want to get into speedrunning, instead of starting with playing a game that they enjoy a lot and beating the shit out of this video game, instead of starting there, they start with, okay, I've got my Twitch alerts overlays to alert people to followers. I've come up with my catchphrase to welcome new followers to the insert something here army, right? I've got all this stuff, and then they do it, right? And then they begin streaming. And then they reach little success, you know? Because people aren't drawn to people with overlays and with alerts and things like that. That's not what people give a shit about. The average viewer doesn't care, right? What they will care about is if they contribute in some way, they do want to be acknowledged. They want to at least exist to the streamer, you know? And so you can do that in a lot of ways. One of the ways that streamers do it is sub-alerts. People don't care about the actual alert itself most of the time, right? What people care about is the acknowledgement that when they subscribe, the streamer knows about them, right? That's what they care about. They couldn't give less of a shit about these crazy colors flying around the streamer being like, welcome to the shit-stain army, and then fist bumping their webcam or something. Who fucking cares? You know, that doesn't matter. What matters is just that acknowledgement. That's what the people seek, right? So the problem with attempting to do all these things, right, that top streamers do to give that acknowledgement when you're a new streamer, the problem with that is that you don't do it in the right way. Like, you don't have a sub button, right? You're acknowledging people for following, which, firstly, I just want to say, is really fucking terrifying. I hate going into a stream and I'm like, oh, I like this, and then hitting the follow button, and then they're like, thanks for following, Ubergoose. I literally just hit the unfollow button and just forget about them. Every time. And the reason for that is if people want to lurk, let them lurk. That's how it works. If people want acknowledgement, they have ways to do it. You know? They have ways to do it. There's the chat, and then when a streamer gets to a certain size, and the chat is, you know, ridiculous, and there's really no way to get acknowledgement of the streamer via chat anymore, the way to do it is through sub or donating, right? That's it. That's the entire reason people care about sub and donation alerts, is they want the acknowledgement that they can't get because, you know, there's no other way to do it aside from that. And sometimes, yeah, no, don't get me wrong, a lot of people do it. They'll sub or donate because they want to support the streamer, and that's awesome. Those people are my favorite. But there are plenty of people who do it just for the acknowledgement, especially if you're looking at top like esports streamers. Like if you look at like Sing Sing or who's a League of Legends one, like Trick2G. I'm sure Hotshot still streams. I don't know. But you look at those streamers and it's just like subtrains, right? Ridiculously long subtrains. And I guarantee you that there is no way every person who's a part of those subtrains is doing it just because they want to support the streamer. That's just impossible. That's impossible that every single one of them would just be doing it to support the streamer, right? People have their own motives and shit. And that's the whole point of this gigantic episode-long tangent. But, so let me get back to what I'm trying to say. So the problem is, these people, they copycat these top streamers who employ these sellout tactics to turn their hobby into their job. And if you can't tell, when I say sellout, I'm doing so with mental air quotes, because I think the term sellout is a really stupid one, but it's the best one to get my point across. So that's why I'm using it. Anyway, so people will see these top streamers do this stuff, and it's like, I can do this, yeah, and then they do it, and then they fail because the point of the stuff, they're missing the point of all these sellout tactics, right? They just think that they can copycat and it works, when that's not the case. And so then these people who have now had poor success and are now, you know, in this quote-unquote trapped in this hobby that really the main reason they're in it is for the monetary gain. They're trapped in this hobby, and you know they're unsuccessful in it and can't make it their job, and now they've got a chip on their shoulder, right? And now is when you get all of these people who have different motivations for being there disagreeing on things, and that's what causes fragmentation in a community. And that's essentially what's happened to speedrunning. It's just this long process of fragmentation because of the different motives of people. And again, there's nothing wrong with having a different motive for anything. There's nothing wrong. Nothing at all. The problem is the fragmentation. The motives are the symptom, you know? Although that's technically the reverse of what a symptom in a disease. Yeah, you get what I'm saying, though. Like, they just are, they're just this piece of the puzzle, right? There is a lot more going on under the hood, if you will. But that's like that's the gist of it. And when you have fragmentation in a community, that's when you start getting people like me who enjoyed the community for what it was, who are like, it's just not the same, right? And I'm not saying that because like, speedrunning used to be better. Put on my thick rim glasses and sport my pocket protector and fucking chow down on my pumpkin spice mocha latte while wearing my Crocs and socks. You know, like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, I don't like where the community is because of the fragmentation, you know? Man, you know, I was saying, like, I didn't want to talk about it and I wanted to collect my thoughts. Apparently I did a good job of collecting my thoughts before this episode. I wasn't even planning on talking about it. But, you know, that's the gist, right? That's the basics. There's a bit more to it. There are specific assholes that I've dealt with that really have just put me off, but, you know, that's the gist, is the whole fragmentation led to an overall kind of community shift in a direction that I don't really personally enjoy. So I mean that's it, right? Like, there you go, you're welcome. But I do want to make it like a more formal video. I'm probably gonna do it like just a, I don't know, like an update sort of thing, like webcam and shit. Because I'm sure there are people who are subscribed to me who don't watch these Isaac videos, and I know that for a fact because I have 7,000 subscribers, and the average Isaac video gets in the realm of 100 to 200 views, which you can run the numbers on that and figure out that not everybody watches these. So, yeah, I'll do a more formal video, which again, not everybody will watch, but my hope is that more people will watch. Nah, just kidding. It's just so I can reel you in and turn your impressions into fucking YouTube micro pennies or something. I mean, I'm not gonna not monetize it. Let's be real here. But yeah, so I don't know. That's kind of what I'm feeling. I might include the specifics, the people. The problem is if I include the actual people, like, okay, so there's two ways that it could go if I included actual people who have been shitty to me in general, or who I perceive as shitty people in the speedrun community. There's a few things that can happen from that. One, I could be considered a massive douche trying to incite a witch hunt, which is not what I mean. I just like being transparent. I mean, that's it, you know. If God, what am I, there's a thing I'm trying to think about right now. Thinking is tough, man. No, but like, if somebody's shitty to you within a community that you're a part of, right? I see no benefit to anybody to be like, there was a person who was shitty to me. And I was like, who was it? Well, I'm not gonna say. You know, well then why did you tell me that people were being shitty? You know? It just feels, like it's almost like a boogeyman at that point, right? Just a completely baseless sort of thing, and you just want people to side with you. You, like, I guess, sympathy. So I like being transparent. I would want to actually say, like, who the people were. But at the same time, that could be people could misconstrue that as me attempting to start a witch hunt, or me shit-talking other people. And, you know, God knows one of them, if I were to mention them by name, one of them would come into the video and, like, probably just sling shit at me or something. Like actual human fecal matter. Saying something along the lines of how I was never a true speedrunner or something along those lines. I don't know. And, like, that shit doesn't bother me anymore just because I know for a fact they're shitty people. But, like, what bothers me is that they have influence on other people. I want everybody to make their own judgments based on actions of people. Or people's actions, I guess. I don't, you know, I am very against the idea of formulating your opinion on somebody based on what other people claim about them. And that's not to say, like, you know, if somebody tells me, oh, this guy did such and such to me, like, you know, I'm gonna listen, you know, and if I know the person that they're referring to, and I know that they're not that kind of person who would do that, I'm probably going to look for evidence. I'm gonna look for actual things that support this anecdote. But in most circumstances, if that's the first thing I learn about somebody, that's gonna stick, you know? And there's nothing I can really do about that. There's nothing anybody can do about it. But the thing is, if it's more along the lines of just, like, somebody slinging shit, like in the example of the person who's, in my opinion, a shitty person, and who has been a shitty person to me on multiple occasions, you know, if I'm gonna say something about them, and they're gonna come in the comment section and be like, blah, 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 he's just butt mad about this thing, you know, I would hope that people wouldn't take that as fact, you know? People would look into that. at most, you know. I mean, like, if people find out that, yeah, I'm butt mad as fuck about the thing that this person's saying, then sure, you know, that's fine. But just like such an empty defamation claim, if you will, you know, I wouldn't consider that fully defamation, but it's in the region of defamation, saying that somebody is, you know, trying to just eliminate. I mean, it's ad hominem for sure, right? Like, if I'm saying this person did these shitty things to me, and then that shitty person comes around and is like, you're just mad, haha, mad nerd. That's ad hominem, right? That's just literally, are you going to rebut, or are you going to just sit there and insult my person, right? There's a difference. And that's the problem, is that a lot of people will take the ad hominem as a rebuttal, and, you know, in their head it'll be this whole thing. Anyway, I don't know. That was a nice episode for me. Holy shit, I like venting about stuff. That's nice. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. You know, leave a comment and shit. Okay, I will be returning with the World of Warcraft series soon. I think I'm gonna record some tonight. And other than that, I don't know. I do want to do more Hearthstone stuff. The problem is I don't really have a lot of things in mind for Hearthstone right now. And I could do more Arena, but I'm gonna try and actually get better at Arena, you know, post Grand Tournament release before I do some videos on it, because currently my average post TGT is probably like 5 wins, and that's pretty low. I want to get it to, like, you know, 7. That's the goal before I record more. But we'll see. I do always want to start new series. That's the thing I do. I have a problem, but hopefully you guys can stick with me. I appreciate all of you guys, and yeah, we'll see you in the next episode. Bye. Goodbye.